I was gripping the door handle so hard my fingers hurt, staring at the red light ahead, thinking about how quiet he suddenly was, and wondering why my chest felt tight for no reason I could name. We were driving home from his sister's house, late afternoon light, stretching shadows across the highway. The kind of drive where nothing important is supposed to happen. He had one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting near the gear shift, his jaw set in that familiar way that always told me he was somewhere else mentally. Then his phone buzzed in the cup holder. He glanced down, frowned slightly, and said, "Can you check that for me? I'm driving." It was such a normal request that I did not hesitate. I picked up his phone without thinking, the way I had done 100 times before, the way couples do when they believe there are no locked rooms left between them. The screen was already unlocked. I wish I could say I hesitated then, that something in me warned me to put it down, but I didn't. I tapped the notification, expecting a message from his sister or a work email, something boring and forgettable. Instead, I saw my name. Not as my wife, not with a heart or a nickname, just my name, typed plainly in a message thread I had never seen before. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like missing a step in the dark. I told myself not to read it. I told myself to lock the phone, hand it back. I told myself this was an invasion, and I would regret it, but my thumb moved anyway, almost on its own, scrolling just enough to catch the last message. She's still holding on, but I think I know how to break her. The word break sat there, calm and casual, like it belonged in a conversation about furniture or habits, not about a person, not about me. For a second, the car felt too small, the air too thin, the sound of the road too loud in my ears. I felt heat rush to my face, then drain away, leaving me cold and hollow. I read the line again, slower this time, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping context would save me. But there was no context yet, just that sentence, and the timestamp from a few minutes earlier. My husband cleared his throat. "What does it say?" he asked, eyes still on the road. I could hear the normal rhythm of his voice, the practiced calm, and it made something twist painfully inside me. "It's nothing," I said, because my mouth betrayed me before my mind could catch up. I locked the phone and placed it back in the cup holder, my hand shaking so badly I had to press it against my thigh to steady it. The rest of the drive passed in silence, but it was not the comfortable silence we sometimes shared. It was filled with things unsaid, with a truth sitting between us, like a third passenger, we both pretended not to see. But my body did not believe those excuses. My heart kept pounding, my throat stayed tight, and a quiet voice inside me whispered that something I thought was solid had just cracked. When we pulled into the driveway, he smiled at me, the same small smile he always used when he thought everything was fine. He asked if I wanted tea, if I was tired, if I wanted to watch something before bed. I nodded, answered in single words, moved through the evening like I was underwater, slow and distant. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing even out as he fell asleep, and I stared at the ceiling, replaying that sentence over and over in my mind. I think I know how to break her. I'd been married to Daniel for 6 years. We met in our late 20s, both of us tired of dating, tired of games, drawn to the idea of stability more than romance. He was steady, reliable, thoughtful, in a quiet way that made me feel safe. Or at least, that was the story I told myself. Looking back, there were signs I did not want to see. Little comments that chipped away at me slowly, jokes that landed a little too close to my insecurities, moments where he dismissed my feelings as overreactions. At the time I called it normal conflict, personality differences, stress. The morning after the drive, I woke up with a headache and a sense of dread that sat heavy in my stomach. Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work, asked if I was okay, told me he loved me. I said it back automatically, the words tasting strange in my mouth. As soon as he left, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the door, my mind racing. I knew I could not let it go. That sentence had lodged itself too deeply inside me. I waited until I was sure he would not come back for anything. Then I picked up his tablet from the living room. He had left it on the coffee table the night before, charging, Unlocked. My hands were cold as I opened the messaging app. The thread was still there. I scrolled up slowly, my heart pounding harder with every line, every bubble of text revealing a version of my husband I had never met, or maybe had refused to see. He was talking to someone named Laura. Laura wasn't a mystery woman or some dramatic secret affair. She was someone he used to work with years ago, someone he occasionally mentioned in passing, always in neutral tones. I'd even met her once, briefly, in a crowded room. Nothing about her stood out. That somehow made it worse. She wasn't temptation. She was an audience at first. The messages were vague complaints, frustrations about work, about stress, about how hard it was to be married to someone so sensitive. He painted himself as patient, long-suffering, generous, and me as emotional, unpredictable, difficult. I felt a familiar sting of shame reading his words, because they echoed things he had said to my face before, things I had already internalized. Then the tone shifted. He started talking about control, not in those words, but in implication. He talked about how I depended on him financially, since I had cut back my hours to take care of the house. He mentioned how I hated conflict, how I always apologized first, how I needed reassurance more than I admitted. She responded with sympathy, with encouragement, with questions that nudged him further. And then came the messages that made my hands tremble. If I pull back affection, she spirals, he wrote. If I act disappointed instead of angry, she tries harder, he wrote. I can make her doubt herself without raising my voice, he wrote. Like it was a skill, like it was something to be proud of. I had to stop reading for a moment, my vision blurring, my chest aching. I pressed my palm to my mouth to keep from making a sound, the room suddenly feeling hostile and unfamiliar. This was not a joke. This was not venting. This was strategy. Scrolling further, I saw the message from the day before, the one I had glimpsed in the car, now surrounded by context that made it impossible to misunderstand. She's still holding on, but I think I know how to break her, he had written, followed by, if she believes she's the problem long enough, she'll stop pushing back. Laura replied with something I could not forget, even if I tried. Just be careful not to push her too far. Broken people can still leave. I felt something inside me snap then. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a thread pulled too tight. I sat there for a long time after that, the tablet heavy in my hands, the house silent around me. And I tried to reconcile the man who made my coffee every morning with the man who described dismantling me piece by piece, like a plan. I thought about all the times I had apologized when I did not understand what I had done wrong. All the nights I lay awake, wondering why I felt so small next to someone who claimed to love me. The realization was slow and painful. He had not been confused by my emotions. He had been studying them. When Daniel came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, my hands folded in front of me, my heart strangely calm after a day of crying, shaking, and pacing. He looked surprised to see me there, serious and quiet. Everything okay? He asked, setting his keys down. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I felt like I was seeing a stranger wearing my husband's face. Who is Laura? I asked. The color drained from his face so fast it almost startled me. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. But his voice was just a fraction too quick. I saw your messages, I said, my voice steady in a way that did not feel like mine. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches seconds into something heavier. Then he sighed, rubbed his face, and did something I did not expect. He smiled, small and tired, like I was a child who had caught him in something trivial. You weren't supposed to see that, he said. That was the moment I understood something fundamental about him, something that would change the way I saw our entire marriage. He was not ashamed of what he had said. He was annoyed that I knew. I stood up from the table, my legs shaking, my mind racing with everything I still did not know, everything he might say next. I don't feel safe with you right now, I said, the words coming out slowly, carefully. He laughed softly, shaking his head. You're overreacting again, he said, just like always. And there it was, the familiar phrase, the one he used to shut me down, to make me doubt my own reactions. Only this time I heard it differently. I heard it as part of a pattern, as a tool, as proof. I walked past him, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door, my heart pounding, my thoughts spinning, knowing that leaving that night was not the end of the story, but the beginning of something I was not yet ready to face. As I stepped outside, the evening air hit my face, cold and sharp, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than fear. I felt clarity. I sat in my car with the engine off, parked a block away from the house, staring at my reflection in the dark windshield, and realizing I had no idea where to go next. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from Daniel. "Where are you? We need to talk like adults." The phrasing alone made my jaw tighten. Like adults. As if I had stormed off over nothing, as if the problem was my reaction, not what I had seen. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to a grocery store parking lot that stayed open late. The kind that was always half empty and brightly lit, where no one would ask why I was sitting alone. I parked near the cart return and finally let myself breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the steering wheel again, grounding myself in something solid. That was when the memories started rearranging themselves in my head. Moments I had dismissed suddenly replayed with new meaning. The way he would go quiet for days after an argument, not angry, just distant, watching me scramble to fix whatever I thought I had broken. The way he framed every disagreement as concern for me, my stress, my emotions, my instability. The way I slowly stopped trusting my own reactions, because he always seemed so calm, so reasonable, so sure I was missing something. It took me weeks to admit this to myself, but Daniel didn't hurt me because he was angry or unhappy. He did it because it worked. My doubt made him feel certain. My fear made him feel calm. My need for reassurance made him feel powerful. Breaking me wasn't the goal. Being the one who held all the pieces was. Another message came through. "You're proving my point right now." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening, recognizing the hook for what it was. If I responded, I would be defending myself. If I stayed silent, I would be framed as irrational. Either way, the story centered on my supposed flaw. I turned my phone face down. I did not go back that night. I drove to my friend Maya's apartment instead, rehearsing what I would say, wondering how to explain something that felt both invisible and overwhelming. When she opened the door, sleepy and confused, I broke down before I could get a single sentence out. I stayed on her couch for 3 days. Daniel called, texted, emailed. His messages followed a pattern that became impossible to ignore. Concern turned into frustration, frustration into guilt, guilt into anger disguised as disappointment. He said he was worried, that I was spiraling, that my anxiety was distorting everything. He suggested therapy, not for us, but for me. At one point he wrote, "I don't even recognize you right now." I almost laughed at that. On the 4th day, I went back to the house while he was at work. I told myself I was just grabbing clothes, documents, essentials. I moved quietly through the rooms, my body tense, my ears tuned for sounds that weren't there. Standing in our bedroom, I opened the closet and saw my reflection in the mirror, smaller than I remembered, eyes tired, shoulders slightly hunched, like I had been bracing for something for years without knowing what it was. I packed a suitcase. Before I left, I did one more thing I hadn't planned on. I sat at his desk and opened the laptop he rarely logged out of. I told myself I was done digging, that I already knew enough, but something in me needed confirmation, needed to understand the full shape of what I was leaving. I found more messages, different dates, different moods, always the same underlying tone. He talked about me like a project, a problem to manage, a personality to adjust. He framed my love as weakness, my empathy as leverage. He wrote about patience like it was a tactic, not a virtue. One message stopped me cold. If she ever realizes what's happening, I'll just say she's projecting. She always doubts herself in the end. I closed the laptop gently, like I was afraid it might make noise. When Daniel realized I wasn't coming back easily, his tone changed again. He showed up at Maya's place one evening unannounced, standing outside like a concerned husband from a movie, telling her he was worried about my mental health. I did not go outside. Hearing his voice through the door, calm and measured, sent a chill through me. I knew that voice. I had trusted that voice. And now I heard the calculation in it. Maya asked if I wanted her to call someone. I shook my head, unable to speak, my throat tight with a mix of fear and something like grief. Eventually, he left. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, quiet conversations, sleepless nights, and moments of doubt that crept in when I least expected them. There were days I wondered if I had overreacted, if I had destroyed my own marriage because of a few messages taken the wrong way. That was when I reread them. Every time the doubt came back, I opened the screenshots I had taken and reminded myself of the language he used when he thought I would never see it. The certainty. The planning. The divorce was not dramatic. There were no screaming matches, no public scenes. Daniel was polite, almost kind, telling mutual friends he hoped I got the help I needed, that he wanted what was best for me. Some of them believed him. That hurt more than I expected. But slowly, quietly, something inside me began to change. Without his constant assessment, his subtle corrections, his disappointment hovering in the background, I started to hear my own thoughts more clearly. I noticed how often I apologized for nothing, how instinctively I questioned my reactions, how deeply his voice had embedded itself in my mind. Healing was not sudden or cinematic. It was awkward and uneven, and full of moments where I missed him for reasons that had nothing to do with love. Habit is powerful. The last time I saw Daniel was in a courthouse hallway months later. He smiled at me, that same small, familiar smile, and asked how I was doing. I looked at him and felt something I did not expect. Nothing. No fear. No guilt. No urge to explain myself. "I'm okay," I said. And for the first time it was true. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that drive home, the phone buzzing in the cup holder, the casual way he handed it to me, convinced of his control, convinced of my blindness. I don't think he planned for one thing. He never planned for me to see myself clearly. And once I did, I was never something he could break again.